like I'm able to journal and meditate and talk to my friends about how I'm feeling and process that in healthy ways and um do it differently this time around instead of just trying to run away from my feelings. And I've learned a lot of really helpful tools. Like when I'm feeling uncomfortable, like a lot of the time for me, it comes on really physically. And I was taught by a therapist to close my eyes and sit with that feeling and identify where it's feeling in my body and try to visualize it. Like, okay, what does this feeling look like? What is this feeling like? What is its texture? What is its color? And kind of give it an image and then talk to it and say, what are you trying to tell me? And communicate with that feeling and say, like, okay, this feeling is making me feel uncomfortable, like, and upset, like, with the way this person is treating me. And, like, that's because today I have self-worth and I know that I don't deserve to be treated like this. And that's why it's affecting me so much. And then for me, it really helps to write things down and get it out on paper and out of my head, because my thoughts will spiral and just run circles in my mind. And that's not productive. I just get like more upset and more angry. And I have anxiety like about the future and I start getting paranoid about things. And so another tool that I've learned is to write down my fears and say, okay, well, what evidence do I have that this is true? And
Mhm.
it's like, okay, maybe I don't have any evidence that it's true, but it still could be. And then it says, what's the likelihood of this being true? And what would happen if this was true? And what would happen if this wasn't true? And just kind of play out those scenarios of how I would feel about either outcome and then how I could respond. And instead of just reacting immediately and jumping to conclusions, I can think out my response in some moments and um, stay in the solution rather than in the problem because my instinct is to just dwell on my problems and feel sorry for myself. Um, and that's just like a miserable place to be, just sitting in your shit, for lack of a better term.
I'm very familiar. The woe is me is I get so trapped in that, even
Yeah.
still. But that just showed so much clarity in not disassociating and being in your body. And that for me too has been one of the highest and lowest parts of sobriety is I didn't realize how much I disassociated until I stopped
Yeah.
drinking. Um, do you also do like the tapping? Like my therapist told me to do like the tapping, like which sometimes
Yeah,
actually.
I've heard that. And then something like this as well. It's supposed to feel like a hug, when you can't get a hug from another person.
Oh,
Yeah, that's been a big one for me is learning how to make myself feel better in healthy ways instead of numbing my feelings, dissociating, or looking for external validation.
mm,
Um, because that also plays into like my insecurities and like low self-esteem. Yesterday, the Just for Today meditation was about self-acceptance. Working on self-acceptance has been another thing that I've been focusing on a lot lately, and it was the topic of both meetings I went to yesterday. And there's a piece of literature that says, we may not even realize that this discomfort is the source of our problem because it is often manifested in other ways. We may find ourselves becoming irritable or judgmental, discontent, depressed, or confused. We may find ourselves trying to change environmental factors in attempt to satisfy the inner gnawing we feel. In situations such as these, our experience has shown that it is best to look inward for the source of our discontent. Very often, we discover that we are harsh critics of ourselves, wallowing in self loathing and self rejection. And I really identified with that, um, because on pretty often I'll find myself like just being pissed off about everything. And it's like, I can find lots of different excuses for why I feel bad and blame it on different things like, oh, my roommates, my boyfriend, my parents, my, like my job, my housing situation, my car, and like find like different external factors to blame for my discomfort and to like say that's the reason I'm feeling bad. But I've recognized that a lot of the time it's because I'm uncomfortable with myself and I'm not accepting myself and I'm feeling bad about myself and I'm projecting. Um, so learning how to accept um myself and recognize like my defects and my assets. Um, and I'm human, like I will make mistakes and being good with that, but knowing that I can work to be better, like that there is growth, like growth is constantly possible in every aspect of our life. And like keeping that in mind helps me stay positive about like, I don't have to be this way forever. And like, just because I'm feeling this right now doesn't mean that I'm going to feel this forever and that I'm not my actions or my thoughts. Like, something that I did or something that I said or something that I thought does not define me as a person. Um, and not to say that like I don't have responsibility for my thoughts and words and actions, but to not, it's not all encompassing, I guess is the best way to say that. I don't know.
No, no, that was so well said. Are you able to do it in the moment? Do that in the moment or now or
Um, I'm still like all these things is like very much work in progress. Like yesterday I was like angry and then I'd like sit and have a moment and be like, talk to myself and just be like, it's gonna be okay. Like there's no reason to worry about this. And like, and I would just keep coming back to it and try to just kind of ground myself. But it's difficult. Like just to say that I like know like a better way to do it is not to say that I'm going to be perfect with doing things better 100% of the time and giving myself a break when I'm not. Because I am just human.
but even that like catching yourself in the moment, even though that you are still feeling it, like you said, like catching yourself and like talking to yourself and sometimes hearing your voice in that moment is comforting. Like it's okay, it's gonna be okay. Like that is amazing. And so few people, whether they struggle with substance abuse or not, have a hard time with that time. And I still have a really hard time gauging my responsibility in things. I'm either the sole responsibility for something or I have no responsibility in something. Like I have such a hard time. I'm either like everything is someone else's fault or everything is my fault. Like that woe is me. Like I suck. Do you have compassion for yourself, do you say? Would you say now overall? I mean, I know there's moments, but overall, would you say?
Yeah, learning to have compassion for myself, um, um, and learning to forgive myself. I'm like very critical of myself, and I think a therapist was telling me like I was struggling with forgiving myself for something, and she said, "Would you forgive someone else if they did that?" And I said, "Yeah, like everybody makes mistakes, you know." And she's like, "Well, then why can't you forgive yourself?" And so, like, kind of practicing that compassion with myself and realizing I also have a really hard time finding that middle ground between like I'm a monster or completely inconsequential, like my part. And so learning to take responsibility but not blame. That's another one of those like guilt and shame, responsibility versus blame. And I saw this visual. It was like a whole pie. And like if you're blaming yourself, you're eating an entire pie. Obviously, it's going to make you feel bad. And so to look at your part in it, and this is your piece of the pie, and you can have your piece, and someone else can have their piece.
Oh my God. Hey, blame is eating the whole pie, your part in it.
And some parts are bigger than other parts, you
Right.
know?
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I loved so much about I don't know if you did this one in your steps, but the resentments is like seeing what my part in really seeing with compassion of like, oh yeah, I guess I never looked at that in this way, but I guess I did have some part in it. Like maybe it was like 10%, but I did have a part to play in that. And holding that with compassion. Winding down here, my last few questions. What advice would you give to someone who is wanting to become sober?
Go to a meeting, don't be judgmental, and give yourself a break. Ask for help. The asking for help thing was the hardest part for me. But it's also what saved me. Um, I've been around Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a court card for a DUI and I had to go, and my mom's part of the program. So it was, and then like the first time I went to rehab, I was encouraged to go to AA. And I kind of walked in with a lot of judgment and I saw the word God's on the wall. And at the end, they all hold hands and chant. And I was like, this is a cult, and
This is a cult.
I was, and then I hear people's stories and I was like, wow, I'm not that bad. Like, I don't need to be any part of this. Like,
What am I doing here?
all right, y'all have fun with that. I'll see you ever, hopefully.
Good
Um,
luck. Yeah.
yeah. And I think I had to get to the point where they call it the gift of desperation, where I was just like so miserable. I was like, I'm just like gonna do whatever people tell me to do. If they say it'll help, might as well give it a shot because I have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And so when I was in residential this past time, they brought me to a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous, which I had never considered because I always thought like Narcotics Anonymous, I've never done narcotics. Like I didn't think that I would identify, but I was brought into this meeting and the speaker, like, it felt like she was like sharing my story. Like her feelings were like exactly how I felt. And I was just like, whoa. And then somewhere towards the end of the meeting, they were like, I barely even remember this meeting. I was a wreck. Like I was crying and just like so uncomfortable and just like so like full of shame. Um, but I heard that I was supposed to ask for help and I was like, okay, like I saw those women over there. They seem like they like have their shit together. I feel like I should go ask them for help. And so I'm walking up to them like with this styrofoam cup of coffee and I'm already like shaky, detoxing, like just uncomfortable, don't want to be there. And I tripped and I spilled my coffee all over the carpeted floor and I just start crying harder because I just don't even know what to do. And these women just like reach out to me with open arms and say, welcome home. And they gave me their phone numbers and told me to reach out and to keep coming back. And I did. And like, that's how I have stayed sober is like just the hugs and the open arms and the unconditional love and support of other women in the program and taking suggestions. Like one of those women has become my sponsor and like whatever she tells me to do, I'm going to do because she's stayed clean for 13 years and like that's crazy to me. Like I got 4 months and it's been a struggle. So yeah, just being open-minded, honest and willing